His research interests include, but are not limited to, nano or molecular communication for advanced medicine and healthcare, artificial intelligence for drug discovery and the development of human digital twins, systems biology, wireless communication, the Internet of Everything, blockchain, extended reality, complex systems, autonomous vehicles, and advanced waste management. Prof. Uche, if you are ready, I hand over to you.
Thank you. Can I share my slide?
Sure, Prof, you can share your slide.
Can you see my slide? Is it visible?
Yes, Prof, it is visible. We can go ahead.
So good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Uches. During the introduction, you can see that I'm everywhere. So when in terms of research, you see me everywhere. So I'm this guy that is everywhere. So I'm purely into multidisciplinary research. So, but my major is, I majored in electrical engineering, my bachelor, my master's degree, my PhD. So, but over the years, I've had interest in virtually everything that I see interesting. So be it nanocommunication, in wireless communication, in the medical field, in chemistry, in biology, in waste management, anything. So, and there is a history behind that. So the discussion today is about AI and the future of work in Africa. I think everyone in this forum have had the word AI. And then the discussion about the future of work in Africa with respect to AI have been going on, not only in Africa, I mean, across the world. And people are talking about the opportunities and the challenges. Today, I'm going to look at things differently because when you look at what people have been saying over the period, a lot of people are coming from, either you're coming from the angle of maybe big tech that have, financial gain to make in the AI space, or you are just ignorant of what AI is, and then you say whatever you think you want to say. And some people are just genuine in what they're saying, and others are literally echoing what others have said. But I want to come from a different angle, the angle of someone who is not really, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in AI. I'm not sure anybody is, but from someone who is in the technical, been doing a lot of technical research in AI. So to look at what will be the future of AI, particularly when it comes to work in Africa. So the way I structure this seminar or this talk is basically there will be preliminaries where I will set the pace to what we are going to discuss, particularly the past, what have been happening over the years, and where Africa stands in this march or the AI voyage. Then I will talk about the generative model, which for me is the AI tool that actually brought AI into the limelight where it is now the talk of the town. And so that is what we call the generative AI. So we'll look at generative AI, which probably everyone here must have used. And then what does it tell about the future of work? And then beyond that, we talk about things that are already in place. Most of the things, in fact, virtually everything I'm going to talk about are things that are already in place or about to be completed in terms of development. And then finally, I will give my opinion as to what we must do as Africans. So if you look at this slide, you will see that AI is coming. And I always say AI is coming because in actual sense, of course, that is debatable. What we have today is not actually artificial intelligence systems, but it is okay, it's fine to call most of them artificial intelligence systems. AI is still coming. It is on its way. Currently, splinters of it are already here, like you talk about machine learning and things like that. But the difference between the impact AI will make and the impact that a meteor will make on Earth is that if it is a meteor, it is more like a sudden impact and you feel the effect. But AI is a creepy one. You know, it's not going to come like that. It's going to creep into the entire system. And before you know it, you won't know that it actually came. I'm going to explain what that means. So the question we ask is Africa prepared for what is coming? Is Africa prepared? Are we all prepared? This is a conversation that should be happening in a very serious conversation that will be happening in the entire space of Africa. But I doubt whether that is happening. But after this, I think most of us will start asking questions. Because are we prepared like the way we are prepared for climate change and things like energy transition? Because we talk about energy transition, everybody is talking about how to move from the fossil fuel to alternative energy or more reusable energy. But in Africa, we can't even produce a single solar panel. No African country is doing this. I was in a seminar, not really a seminar, it's a roundtable where you have a lot of people around, people from the industry, people from the government, people from the European Union, all those. And they were talking about energy transition. Everybody is talking about how to make sure that there is no job loss, then we'll make sure that and then there are probably money flying around, probably. But a young lady asked this question. We're talking about energy transition, but we can't even fabricate. Where are the industries that produce solar panel? When she asked that question, she was given like 30 seconds of silence. Nobody said anything. After that, the meeting continued like she never said anything. But that is very important because things like energy transition, solar, the production of solar panel, the entire value chain and production chain is providing countries like China over 2 million jobs. And across the world, you're talking about between 5 to 10 million jobs. But in Africa, not even a single company is doing that. The question is, if we can act that way in things like energy transition, what about artificial intelligence, which will be more impactful? So in Africa, are we acting from the point of seriousness, or are we just discussing? Are we just discussing, or are we acting? So that is the question that at the end of this discussion, we may address. What I'm going to do is not really to tell you that it's going to be very wonderful. The journey through AI will be wonderful. Rather, what I'm going to say, I'm going to label what is probably going to happen, and you can make your decision. So, if we look at the past, we have in first industrial revolution, we have the second, we have the third, we have the fourth. We are currently in the fourth industrial revolution. In the first industrial revolution, we had our steam engine, which the invention of steam engine helped us to get into mechanization and be able to replace human and animal power with the steam-powered engine. Then in the second industrial revolution, which happened in the mid of the 19th century. We were able to have electricity. So with electricity, and then by the side we had steel. Those two were able to give us assembly line, and then we had our mass production, TV and the radio and things like that. Then we had the third industrial revolution, which is roughly at the middle of the 20th century. Basically, it was the invention of the transistor, which is electronics. So with that, we got into automated production, the internet, and then information technology and the rest. Now, in the second and the third industrial revolution, Africa was not there. Africa was not in the first industrial revolution, not in the second, not in the third. They were actually part of it somehow, but they were being exploited. So either in terms of human resources or in terms of the natural resources. The question is, in the fourth industrial revolution, where AI is part of, how will Africa count or be counted? So this discussion is about, because most people are concerned about our future. If I ask people what is AI, the moment you hear AI, you think of alien, you think of robots, you think of things like that. So the question is whether artificial intelligence is going to affect our future in terms of job. So we're concerned about the future of our children. To see the future is probably if you have a crystal ball, you can look into the future, but I don't have that here. So all I have is to be able to predict. And of course, I may not be right. When you predict technologies, most of the time you may be wrong. But anyway, we still have to do some prediction. So the question we asked at the beginning of this and then at the end of this discussion is whether the coming of AI and the use of it will portend a kind of bright future or a gloomy one. And you can answer it at the end of this. So because we are talking about the effect of AI on jobs, so let's look at have a job outlook, look at the job in Africa. Statistics says that we'll have 1.5 billion. Though personally I doubt this, because most countries in Africa don't actually conduct census. So I'm not sure how they know that we have 1.5 billion. But let's assume that is correct. So in 2023, we'll have roughly 1.5 billion, 1.4 something. And the projection is that by 2050, with the way things are happening, we may get up to 2.5 billion people in Africa. Out of the 1.5 billion we have currently, there are about roughly 1 billion at the working population. That is people who can work. Out of that, we have just roughly 500, or half of that are employed. So, which means roughly we have 1/3 of Africans employed. Now we're talking about employment. We're not saying gainfully employed, because probably the number that is gainfully employed would be probably much less than what we have here. So if we assume 530 million Africans are employed, our assumption would be that in the future we'll have more Africans, the ratio of Africans employed and the ones that are not employed, the total population, and then the number that is working, the ratio should be quite significant. That is what we're looking at. Currently, it is 1/3. So if not by 2030, 2040, that at least we maintain this ratio if we're not going to add anything. But that is not most likely going to be possible because of artificial intelligence and other technologies. So according to the World Economic Forum, they predicted that we're going to lose 92 million jobs from 2025 to 2030. 92 million jobs will be lost. But again, they tried to share us all by saying that about 170 million new jobs will be created. So that gives a net of about 78 million jobs. And if you divide that, let's say we divide it across 6 continents. In Africa, we'll be having roughly between 10 to 13 million jobs added from now to 2030. But remember, the population is going to increase. Projection of the population is that we are going to increase to probably 1.7 billion. So if you check the ratio of the number of people that be working, if you add this 13 billion or 10 billion to 13 million to the 530, now the ratio will get much higher than that, is lesser than 1/3. So in that case, that doesn't look good. If you divide that across the 54 countries in Africa, then it becomes probably quite too small. So now, where are these activities going to be happening, this job loss and job creation? According to the World Economic Forum, they stated that most of this will be happening. If you look at this data here, you will see that most of them will be happening around AI. So about 80%, roughly an average, AI. So the job loss, the job creation will be happening around AI, and some of them will be probably somewhere in the robotics. So it tells us how important artificial intelligence is. And when people talk about this, it is just to point out, if you have used this technology, if you have actually developed one, you will know that it is a technology that is extremely very creepy. It is creepy because it can sit on any of your devices and do whatever it wants to do without you being aware of that. Okay? For instance, I go home, maybe I'll discuss with my wife about buying something, buying a particular product, just talking about it. And then she goes to the mall, buy it without card, with cash. So we just had discussion. She goes to the mall, buy that product, and then comes back. The next moment, they start advertising it. So even her identity, whether she says something or not, whether something is actually listening, I probably don't know. So in all these spaces, like for instance, it shows how important artificial intelligence is going forward. So whether you're in education, in electronics, in agriculture, professional service, oil and gas, mining, and whatever, artificial intelligence and robotics are going to play a very important role. So now, when we talk about this fourth industrial revolution, in this discussion, we are just seems to be focusing on artificial intelligence. But then there are other technologies that will actually influence it. And each of these technologies, be it nanotechnology, sensor network, blockchain, and cloud computing, Internet of Things, all of them are powerful technologies on their own. But when they start to combine, the problem with AI is not necessarily about AI on its own. If you write an AI, develop a training model, it can sit in your computer, it's not going to do anything. It starts being more creepy when you start to integrate it with some of this technology. And that is, for me, the challenge of the future. It's not all about artificial intelligence. It is when you start to integrate them into some of this technology, as we're going to see. So, but let's kind of start and focus on the artificial intelligence. So, what is an AI? Now, again, let me say that is debatable anyway, but I stand to be corrected that most of the things we have, most of all the, whether ChatGPT and whatever, they are not actually intelligent systems. I don't see intelligence. Intelligence is all about surprise. If you go to a class and you ask them who is the most intelligent here, I mean, they're looking at intelligence in terms of what you feed them. So for instance, you teach them this particular course or topic or give them assignments and things like that. With everything that was taught in the class, one person comes out best. And when they say someone is intelligent, it's just the amount of surprise they get. That giving, for instance, if you feed a child and it gets fat, then there is no surprise. But if you feed a child and the child refuses to get fat, that is the surprise. So when you talk about artificial intelligence and you talk about ChatGPT and all those ones, personally, I don't see them as being intelligent because you can't feed them with the amount of data that they're fed with, and they don't expect this type of results. No, there is no surprise. It is basically they're supposed to give those things. But now, for you to discuss or describe artificial intelligence, you need to look at natural intelligence. And natural intelligence, like I said, is all about the level of surprise you get from what somebody should know and what the person is actually giving in response. So, but I'm not going to go deep into discussing this because it's a little bit controversial. So for some of us who don't know, I mean, you hear AI and you don't know much about it. In a simple sense, an artificial intelligence system is just a combination of, or a code, software written commands that are running on a hardware. That is basically what it is. So you give it data, you train it to, see a particular pattern, and then you feed it any data that is related to what it was trained to do. Then it will give you a response. So the more data you use to train it, in most cases, will give you the better response you have. But then, without going into that, the question is why the buzz around AI? AI has been around since even before 1950s. But today we're talking about it as if it just started. And that is, for me, because of the coming into our knowledge space, some of these large language models, like ChatGPT, Gemini, and all those ones. Now we got into the space that people can actually use the so-called AI products. So when you use that, I mean, people get to see what it can do. But like I pointed out, AI has been around. And even these technologies, the ChatGPT, most of these technologies have been, the training of these large language models has been on for years. Because ChatGPT they didn't start training it in 2022. Neither did they start training Gemini in 2023 and other ones. These things have been going on. A lot of people are working and people are still working up to now. So now we can use some of these things. You ask them questions, they respond, even when they may be wrong, but at least they try. So the question is, how are we going to be affected? I mean, how are we going to be affected? How are our job going to be affected going forward when we have these technologies? Now, I don't think there is, personally, I don't think there is a huge immediate problem in terms of, or the challenge they pose to our work, because most of these models are basically what you can call assistive AI. So they assist us to, do things. If you don't know something, you can ask them. They probably give you a correct answer or at least guide you. So they're basically assistive AI. So by assisting you, I'm not sure they're going to take away people's job. Probably a couple of them, but like translators, you don't need a translator anymore. You can actually use this to do your translation. So I'm just going to discuss a couple of jobs that the way they're going to affect some of these jobs. For instance, an administrative or personal assistant in 2025 going forward. Generative AI can help you to do a lot of things. So for instance, if you're asked to, maybe your boss asks you to prepare 10 letters and to be sent to maybe some clients or things like that, before you need to have to write the first one, the second one, the third one, 10 of them. But with generative AI, that can assist you to quickly do that and then send them. That is fine. For factory workers, of course, they're not going to lose their job. They're basically going to use some of the information from generative AI to improve their work. Then in medical and healthcare, just the same thing. Everybody would just be, it is basically an assistive system that helps you to improve, get more knowledge and improve your work. The same thing with content creators. You can create better content for your audience. And so generative AI can do that. However, people like translators will actually start losing their job, or most of them may have lost their job up to now. Now, for us in the academy, we have a challenge. Others are looking at it from the positive side, but in education, it is a little bit mixed. Because in terms of learning, the learners will want to use it, of course, to gain more knowledge and then be able to pass the exams and things like that. But for teachers, it becomes a challenge, because how do you assess someone who is using AI tool? If you give an assessment, for instance, I teach mathematics for artificial intelligence. And I know that if I give you assignment, it is easy to go ask some of these generative model or some of the specialized ones to give you the answer, and you submit. Okay? The same thing in terms of research and supervision. The question is, if a student is submitting a paper, how much of AI is there? And you can see when you want to submit some papers, they'll ask you to tell them if you use AI tools. Of course, people that use AI tools won't say anything anyway. So the question is, for instance, your students, your PhD students or master students, the results they come with, are those results theirs or have significant contribution from artificial intelligence? There is no way to answer this, except if you start looking, which means if you give assignment, instead of marking the students to know who is smart or not, you're actually marking who is cheating or not. So that has become a challenge for people in education. However, jobs will not be lost in this space, because again, it is more like an assistive system. And the challenge there is the measure of intelligence will need to be redefined, because currently in the era of generative AI, intelligence and result will be factored on the capability of AI tools you have access to. So if the more tools you have access to, the more results you get, the better you are. So things like continuous assessments becomes the challenge. Okay. And if you think people are, even some of the people that produce this generative model, they know. For instance, this company, Anthropic, that produced the cloud chatbot, when they advertise for a job, they always write that, make sure that you don't use AI in this application. Don't use AI to prepare your letter, because they want you to tell them who you actually are instead of using their own product to do that. But once you start working, they're fine with it. You can use it. But before they employ you, they want to know who you are, what you're capable of doing. So they actually know that it will be difficult going forward to determine who is intelligent and who is not, because of these assistive systems. So then there is the gloomy side of it. People say that, oh, once you use generative AI, it will increase their productivity, but that is a short-term approach, because there is something we call cognitive offloading. So cognitive offloading is that, and it's happening these days. Anything you want to do, you ask ChatGPT, tells you the result. And it happened to us when we moved to calculator, and from calculator to computers. That if I ask the audience here to multiply 17 by 19, everybody will put their calculator or whatever and then try to type it. Nobody may be able to do that offhand and then really be sure that the answer they get is the correct one. So one of the problems of using artificial intelligence, particularly generative models, is cognitive offloading. And while it will increase productivity, in the long term, it will reduce critical thinking. There is actually a publication, I think sometime early this year, is it last year, where they sampled people who use generative AI to do their tasks and the ones that don't. And they found out that the ones that actually use generative AI more often have reduced critical thinking capability. And this is naturally, it is a natural phenomenon, because I used to give this example that you have a tadpole, a tadpole will usually, when the egg hatch in the water, it looks like a fish. And after a while, it becomes a frog, losing the tail. So the tail is lost because the animal tend to spend more time, they spend more time on on land, then this tail will, the use of the tail will become, the use of it will become insignificant. Usually what will happen is that the rest of the body will eat it up and use it to develop the hands and this. So if you're not exercising your brain, you're not using it, what it simply means is that some of the cells, that is my postulation, I don't have evidence for that, but some of the cells may start to give away or be turned into something else. So, and in the long run, evolutionarily, it will increase cognitive inequality, because a lot of people will constantly be using this, and then their critical thinking will get lower. And there are people who will be producing some of these tools, AI tools, that will be using. Of course, their critical thinking capability will get higher. So we need to be wary of this. And if you think people are going to stop using it, it's not going to be that easy, because this is a survey that said that 46% of knowledge workers tell their boss to take a hike when it comes to generative AI. So 46% say they will continue to use it. They shouldn't. They have tested it and see how wonderful it is, and then it's not going to be easy to stop them. So I will pause for just probably, if you have any question at this point, you can ask before we proceed. And we'll have just 5 minutes for that. Any question? Just one question or 1.5 questions? Okay, can you go, Mike, can you go on, please? Put on your mic and then you can ask your question.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned earlier on that when you give us like a model of AI to say input, then process, then output.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I would like to bring up is that for us here in Africa as a continent, I think AI, it's more theoretical than practical. We are not putting these things into practice so that we actually see where we are starting and where we are ending. So it's a challenge that I'm not sure what can be done so that we more like put it into practice rather than mainly focusing on theory.
Thank you very much. And I have I think towards the end of this discussion, there is a slide that discuss what you just, the question he asked. Because if you look at the space of policy making, I think virtually every African country is talking about to make AI policies. How can you be making policies of things you don't know anything about? I asked somebody who is in that space, I remember his comment, he said that we just make policy, we just rubber stamp, we don't even understand what they're talking about. So yes, you're correct. Today we are talking about ChatGPT. There is none in Africa. There is ChatGPT from America, from Europe, from Asia. There is none from Africa. So we're probably not in the equation. And I think it's time for us to do something different. We need to act instead of talking, okay, or discussing. You're right on that. So I will take that towards the end of the presentation. So as I pointed out, there is probably little or not much to worry in the immediacy if you are using generative AI. But our worry will start when this come into place. What I'm talking about is what we call agentic AI. This is the one that is going to change a lot of things. And the agentic AI is not far-fetched. It is already here. Virtually all the company, whether it is Google, whether it is Amazon, whether it is Microsoft, they are all developing agentic AI. And they're seriously developing it. Most of them are saying they're going to roll it out this year. Just like the ChatGPT and all those words. And I can bet you ChatGPT of higher version, probably 5.0 or 5.5, they're already done with that. They've already developed that. They're just looking for the right moment to roll them out. So agentic AI this is the one that's going to change a whole lot of things and the way we see or the type of work we do. Now, agentic AI is, at this point of this discussion, you look at it as a software. It is actually going to start as a software. Now, what is it? So just to give an example, imagine you have a personal assistant or administrative assistant in an office. And remember I said you're asked to write 10 letters. So what you're going to do is to start writing the letters. You can use your generative AI to help you write 10 letters. However, once you have agentic AI, your agentic AI becomes your personal assistant or administrative secretary. You get up in the morning, you ask the agentic AI, what am I supposed to do today? It's going to tell you, oh, you're supposed to respond to 5 or 10 clients. Are you supposed to write them letter? You're supposed to do this. It's okay. Can you prepare the letter, please? I mean, you're talking to your phone or whatever device that the software can run on. You prepare 10 letters and let me see it before you send them. And then it goes, and in a couple of maybe minutes or seconds, it comes with 10 letters, shows you the letter you can read through, make corrections, or if you're okay with it, you say, please, can you send? So what's the essence of using a secretary or an administrative assistant when you have an agentic AI system? So there are basically softwares that are being produced now that you can use. And so what you do is give it an input, tell it what you want, and it will do that. You can tell it to do your, maybe book your flights, do anything that the personal assistant will do, they will actually do it. The only thing they probably will not do at this stage is anything that has to do with physical, moving something from one point to the other. Okay, so like I said, and I think most of our youth should go into developing agentic AI systems. It's not quite difficult, though it requires a lot of expertise to do that. And there are people that can guide them. So that is when we start to worry, because we have something that actually can replace us. And some of these agentic AI can actually be very predictive. So you get up in the morning, you ask them, what am I supposed to do today? They can tell you things and then even tell you, remember, once you are done with this meeting, you will need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. In that sense, they are predicting. They actually, and that is when they get the predictive capability, which they already have. Like I pointed out, these things are already there. It's just for them to roll them out. And the difference they make, when you compare to generative model, what we have is basically assistive AI system. This one is delegative AI system. We are delegating our jobs to them. We're delegating our commitments and things like that. So simple tasks, you tell them to do that. Check my phone. Can you check my bank account and see whether there is anything? And then they can actually act on your account and do whatever you ask them to do. So at that point, we start losing a bit of our freedom. Now, I'm saying these things because when we talk about AI, people tell you the good part of it. I don't think when they do that, they are taking Africa into consideration, because the other time, I think it was the chief of Microsoft in Africa that was asked, he was saying wonderful things, how AI is going to create this job, do this one, do this one. But my question is always, can you tell me exactly the job that is going to create? We will see, we know the job is going to take, but which ones are going to be created and how? Is it that we should be okay using tools that are manufactured elsewhere instead of producing ours? So these are some of the jobs that will be first hit when and we're talking about from now to 2030. You talk about administrative or personal assistant, customer support, and all these guys, even computer programmers, because these days being a computer programmer is no more the end thing, because the ChatGPT can write better programs than most programmers. So what's the sense of studying computer programming when the ChatGPT can actually write very good programs? Okay, even some of these Grok and the DeepSeek, some of them are very good at writing programs. So things like financial assistant, even content and media creation, like journalism. You don't get up in the morning to read newspaper. You just ask your agent to tell me what is in the news. They can scrap the internet and get the type of news they know you like and then give it to you. Things like graphic designers will have challenge, okay? If you're a graphic designer, you already have challenge now because AI produce better graphics than you. So these, as many others, we have challenge. Anybody doing routine job can actually be replaced. Soft routine jobs can actually be replaced. And there is this website, although it's not like whatever they have there is extremely very reliable. They have this, I think it's called, what's it? Will robot, is it AI? No, will robots take my job? That is the name of the website. So if you go through that, maybe you can show, for instance, I asked what is administrative assistance risk in terms of robotics and things. And when we mention robotics, most of them think robot is like AI. They kind of relate them. So you're saying about 88%, which is administrative assistance, things like customer support, cashiers, journalism, and graphic designers and things like that. But for people in education, teachers, they say the risk is low. General physicians, they say the risk is low. However, I won't rely so much on this because these are opinion of the people who are in that space. So, and then they're talking about robots. It could be somewhere within this, but for instance, a graphic designer, I don't see it being at 59%. I see it being much higher than this. Because if a graphic designer, will you be able to develop this? This is what AI did. It is better than what you could have done as a graphic designer, probably. Okay, so AI is getting much, much better than virtual or graphic designers. Now, there is this CNN report that says that 41% of companies worldwide plan to reduce workforce by 2030 due to AI. So this was sometime, I think January 8th this year. And people may say, oh, I was discussing with someone, he said, oh, not necessarily there will be a job that can, we've been saying this, yet jobs are not in decline, they're actually increasing. Yes, jobs may be increasing, but then check the ratio of the number of jobs and the number of people in the world. And there is this thing I developed, this question I asked ChatGPT, all of them, all those language models. I asked them, what happens when the hunter gets a robot dog that can replace the dog? This entire question, I was saying, okay, the hunter is this, and that. What if the hunter decides to get a robot dog to replace the dog? Now, you'll be amazed at the response of all of them. I mean, all, whether it is ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, DeepSeek, all of them, they responded the same way. They were responding in favor of the hunter. They were looking at all the benefit of the hunter when they start using the robot dog. None of them mentioned what will happen today, replace dog. It was not about the dog. It was about the hunter and the robot dog. So, which means that most people may become quite, redundant. And there is this Chinese CEO. He's the producer. I think the company produced the largest number of computer mouse, the whole of China. So they asked him a question and he said whether he is going to reduce the workforce. He said he's going to reduce the workforce to probably by probably 90%, is it 90 or 95%? And they asked him what will happen to those people you lay off. He said they're going to get jobs elsewhere. I mean, elsewhere where? When you are getting them out of your system and you're saying that they'll get the job elsewhere. So one thing we need to do is to understand that the companies won't really bother about you except if the government stands and do something about it. Now, there is still the interesting part because there's always a good part of it. Of course, there will be opportunities created. Things like having AI engineers and AI security specialists, AI ethicists, people that will actually produce this agentic AI. But then the question is, how much opportunities will be here? And then if somebody is, okay, let's somebody is a cashier and the person is leaving the cashier job because you'll be retrenched, how is the person going to start being an agentic AI developer? The knowledge gap is quite wide. So we really need to look at what can be done. But these are some of the opportunities that may arise. And of course, one person can do all these things, okay? Now, things will get more interesting and more, like when you talk about cognitive multimodal agentic AI. Now, this type of AI system is the one that we just simply, now, things are getting more interesting here. We're talking about AI. Now we're integrating AI with another technology, which is your advanced visualization technologies. So once you start getting into this space, this for me is the turning point of the way we feel as humans, because everybody will have this eyeglass or headset. And with that headset, you create a world that you see, a world in which you can interact with your AI agent. And then, once you keep living in that world, you start thinking everything is about that world. So in this case, we call that immersive agentic AI, where you become immersed into this. You create a world of your own with your AI and you start living in it. So it is multimodal because you can give it command, you can give it gesture, you can talk, you can say whatever. You discuss with your agent like you're talking to another human being. Okay? So a lot of jobs will be affected, including teaching. For teachers, the way I say it is that, of course, we have more personalized and remote teaching. You don't probably have to come to classroom and you create maybe a virtual classroom where everybody can use some of these technologies to, interact. And the focus will be interdisciplinary. And I want to point out this at this point that multidisciplinary research is the way to go if we're going to be able to, cushion the impact of artificial intelligence going forward. And in the healthcare, things will have to change. If you're a medical doctor, if you're a nurse and all those things, you need to, up your game, and because everything will move to personalized or precision medicine. And in that case, most of the tasks that will be left for the human will be more complex decisions to make, because some of these agents can actually make some of the decisions, and they can do that perfectly. Okay. And then things like the construction workers, things will actually change. I mean, if you're building a house, you're a bricklayer, it will go beyond just simply taking the bricks and putting there. You may actually start using some of this technology to create a better or become more efficient, because they can tell you, you need to shift this. The moment you get the right, you position it properly, then it will tell you. So it will really become more like an assistant, and a whole lot of people doing things. Because, for instance, if you go to the entertainment industry, if I check that website I mentioned about, they say that things like actors will still be relevant, but I don't think so, because the entertainment will change. The way we view the world through those glasses will change. And we can actually create our own movies, create our own entertainment. And that keeps a lot of people out of job, filmmakers, musicians, and artists. And indirectly, it can affect the transport sector, because if we get very comfortable with living in that virtual world that we create, it is easy to have your meetings, have your seminars, have your workshop, have your classes and board meetings through this virtual world. And in that case, it could affect reduced mobility, and even the ones that be mobile, other technologies can affect, for instance, self-driven vehicles can be used. In that case, that don't actually require the drivers will be off job and things like that. So a lot of things will start to happen then. But then again, there will be new jobs created where you have people working around that agentic AI with augmented reality and all those. So some of these could be jobs. I'm not sure, but these are things that may give us some hope that there will be jobs created. But again, the gap between people who are going to study this and somebody doing psychology or sociology is quite wide. So how do you make sure that people can move from one job to the learn something quickly and do that? So we have been able to integrate artificial intelligence into all those advanced visualization technologies. Now, what about if you integrate artificial intelligence to robots? So currently, you have robots, taking on some of the jobs like dangerous jobs, tedious jobs, and repetitive jobs. They say that, okay, they take these jobs so that they can free up the humans for more complex, creative, and strategic work. However, when the robots become very intelligent, it could actually handle complex and creative or strategic work. So that is another challenge for us. And according to the McKinsey, they predicted that if robots, if you have one robot, you lose 6 jobs, most likely. What if you have an automated system, you may be losing up to 1,000 jobs. So their prediction is that about 800 million workers could be displaced in 42 countries within the 4th Industrial Revolution. So when we are talking about 4th Industrial Revolution, we're talking about the integration of all these technologies, which is what is going to happen. We're not going to be talking about artificial intelligence alone. We'll be talking about artificial intelligence integrated into some of these technologies like robots. So at that point, we move from software agents to physical agents, or a combination of that. So once you start having physical agents, remember when you have a soft agent, they can only do soft work. They can't carry loads. They can't do some of these things. But once you have a physical agent in that ecosystem, then it is possible that a software agent can talk to a physical agent to do something. So in that case, we're actually replacing ourselves completely. And robotics and agentic AI, when you combine them together, you can actually, if you are somebody that owns a factory, you can actually run a factory all alone. All you do, you have a manager that is your AI manager, running everything and everything. You just sit at home. So in that case, nobody will be working here. This is not just very good to my understanding. And it is going to affect jobs. For instance, in teaching, it will revolutionize teaching. Teaching cannot be the way it is today. In healthcare, because just about everyone is going to be affected when we get to that point. And like I pointed out, this is not like something that will happen in 1 million years from now. It is right here with us. So in Africa, it's either we start getting in to develop these things, or we just wait and experience what we experienced during the first and second and third industrial revolution. Now, people are looking at embodied AI. Embodied AI is where AI starts having, feelings. That's the way I say it. And that is the point, according to the World Economic Forum, they say that there will be a merger, a seamless merger between what is physical or what is digital and biological world. All this world will become almost one, that you wouldn't know the difference between that. And even now we're experiencing something like that we don't know what is real and unreal. It is difficult to go online and distinguish AI-generated image and the other one, okay? People can do that now, but in the future, you may not be able to say what is real and what is unreal, and what is true, what is false. So there are a lot of false information being peddled around. So at that point, it will really change what it means to be a human. We are used to being a human by interacting with one another. This time around, we interact with probably some of us, and then we interact more with our invention, which is all these systems. So at that point, I mean, you may live through the eye of your agentic AI system, okay? So now, this is very important because when we talk about the first, second industrial, people always say that, no, people say we're going to lose job. We didn't, The first industrial revolution was necessary. The way I look at it was necessary. We need things that can help us, particularly where our physical ability, beyond the boundary of our physical ability. But what about the second industrial revolution? It enhances electricity help to enhance what we can do. I think we started derailing in the third industrial revolution where we got into exploration without minding what is necessary or not. So it was a knowledge-based system where people who are very smart actually, are able to, make it up the ladder. But then the fourth industrial revolution, for me, it is more like a lot of things could be questionably irrelevant. And then we're creating our own competitors. That is the difference between what we have before and now. And in the first, second, third industrial revolution, we have just basically one or two technologies. This time around, we have a suite of technologies that span probably over 10. And they are very powerful technologies. So how are we going to, in Africa, what are we doing? Or are we going to continue to act or participate the way we participated in the first, second, and third industrial revolution? So clearly, jobs will be lost, things will happen, new jobs will be created, yes. But then in the future, which means 2030, 2040, 2050, what is going to happen? The prediction that we're going to lose 800 million jobs is there, okay? So what are we doing to create more jobs? Now, my thinking is that we are moving away from the knowledge-based economy. What we have before is knowledge-based economy is about knowledge. The economy going forward is an innovation economy. And the innovation economy requires critical thinking, their creativity. However, if we are using ChatGPT, we have questioned that, or kind of stated that if you use it often, offloading whatever task you have to eat, that you are guilty of cognitive offloading, then it affects your critical thinking. Invariably, you will not be a part of innovating anything in the economy of today going forward. So we're moving into the economy innovation. So just to quickly get into what we should do. Now, according to the World Economic Forum, they say that in the new world, that is the world going forward, it is not the big fish which eats the small fish. It is the fast fish which eats the slow fish. So the question is, how slow are we, and what should we do? And I will take excerpt from Professor Marwala, who was a former Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg and an expert in artificial intelligence. There are some of the things, there's I think an article he wrote that says artificial intelligence and the future of work. And I encourage each and every one of us to try to read. Go online, it is there, you can read it. One of the things that is important is, I was talking about Africa, but I'm just extending it to the rest of the Africa. That Africa, we must consider inclusive and equitable way of transiting to the AI-driven work environment. That is number one. And we need to reimagine our education system. We really need to reimagine our education system. For me, it is not enough to tell everybody to go and study AI. Most of us, if you can remember when we were talking about computer literacy, I know when we were being told, oh, learn programming. Today, programming is completely redundant because the machine can do that. We're not even talking about computer literacy anymore. So even if you get everybody to get into AI, that is fine, but not a good strategy anyway. And then he mentioned multidisciplinary education and cross-disciplinary learning. This is, for me, very, very important. And I'm going to talk about it shortly. And then the issue of data. When we talk about machine learning, you can't do machine learning or artificial intelligence as it is today without data. And my experience has shown that most of the data has students. I've had the opportunity of mentoring and supervising almost roughly 50 projects in artificial intelligence. And we always have this challenge of data, particularly if we want to do something or develop or train a model that can, for African or local consumption. We find it difficult to get the data. So in fact, at the end, we end up going to use data probably from India or China or whatever, just for proof of concept. But then we can't deploy such model in our own space. So these are my opinion of what should be done. We need to remodel our education system. Remodeling education system, including even the way we assess students, what should be studied and what are focused, because everything has to be focused on what? Things that all the education system should improve our critical thinking and creative capability. That should be the focus of our education system going forward. And then encourage multidisciplinary research. This for me is very fundamental. The next is encourage core AI research. As we know, the machine learning models that we have today and call them artificial intelligence, for me, they're not as intelligent as they should be. And there are no core, virtually everywhere, we're not actually doing the core AI research. What we are more like doing is application. We look at the existing models, we get data, we play around with that. Sometimes people actually copy people's code, and then you run it, it's fine, you can publish the paper, this and that. But that is not core AI research. We need to be able to develop the next algorithm that has to be used. Okay, better algorithm than the current deep learning algorithm. We need to be able to start working around that space. And we need to establish, for me, as a matter of urgency, a data set engineering center, not data engineering center, not data center. I'm talking about data set engineering center. And I'm going to talk about it shortly. Then we need to move away from talking about or looking for soft jobs. Like we've said, when agentic AI come and software, they're going to take the soft jobs. At least at that point, we should be able to hold on to the hard jobs, okay? Let us be able to move, at least look a little bit beyond talking about the soft jobs. And then trying to move to things that can, for instance, we talk about robotics. Most people can buy robots and then play around with it, but then can we design a robot shouldn't we be doing that? Then we need to reduce our consumption of AI. I mean, dependency on AI tools. It's very important. If not, that will affect our critical thinking capability. And then develop human-centric AI ecosystem. So I'm going to touch on those the first two, and then the establishment of this. So as a matter of urgency, I think it is important for most of the students here, if you are not doing things that are related to machine learning, I think we need to prioritize the inclusion of machine learning in your undergraduate and their graduate research. Irrespective of what you're doing, I've had the opportunity of mentoring students who are from journalism background, from political background, from business management, from virtually all, from chemistry, from biology, from psychology, philosophy, Islamic studies, and mentoring them to be able to include AI, artificial intelligence, in their research. And I think that is where most of us will start, at least if all the graduates, or as many graduates that are coming out from our institution, have actually used AI in their project. It makes them, I mean, it gives you that leverage to do more. It's not, for instance, if you're studying law, it's not about just studying law and those. I mean, you can develop, you already know what law, or what law is about and things around that. You can bring in your, bring in the AI. And I can tell you it is quite easy to do. It is not complex. It's just that when you hear that, you think there is something so special about that. But at least we can help guide you to go through this, come out with a research, or even if you have a research already, come out with just a component that can help you play around with machine learning or artificial intelligence in this case. And this is doable because for some of us, you may not know that in 2024, people who won Nobel Prize in chemistry, 2 of them are not chemists. They're actually computer scientists. But they won a Nobel Prize in chemistry. You know what that is? So this is, I mean, for me, this is something that encourages me to keep doing multidisciplinary research. That if somebody who comes from an entirely different background could win a Nobel Prize in a subject like chemistry, 2 of them here, in a subject like chemistry, then it means that anybody can do any research. So even if you're doing philosophy, you're doing electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, law, you can actually get into this space, and it is much easier to do. So an Institute for Intelligence System, Artificial Intelligence System, where we have experts who can actually guide you. So I encourage even supervisors and students discuss. We can actually help, we can collaborate, we can help you to, structure whatever research you have to see if there is a component of AI you can touch. That could help you to become, I mean, going forward, you can actually boldly get into any AI project and start developing whatever you can. So we have experts in AI and machine learning, natural language processing, computer vision, and people that can help you. I mean, if you want to do drone and all those things, but particularly AI, natural language processing, and computer vision. So we have experts. If you get in touch, we can get you and your supervisor to, maybe add a little component of artificial intelligence, and that can help you in publication. So I can bet you what is it to publish, because we have students who are actually undergraduate students who actually publish in us, undergraduate students, because of their involvement in the AI projects. So whether you're in chemistry, whether you're in biochemistry or macrobiology, there is something for you. Actually, currently I'm working in this space, so there is currently something for you to do here. Your physics or material science, there are a lot of AI that you can. So no matter what you're doing, as long as there is data there is data. Even if you don't have the data, we can look around, there is always going to be data that you can somehow, get into your research. And then the people in environmental science, whether it's geology, soil science, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, chemical, all those, every one of this group can actually use AI tools. So AI can do, I mean, you can, even if it's Islamic studies, even if it's religious studies, languages, philosophy, you can actually use that. And of course, in finance, we have a couple of students who are working in this space. Entrepreneurial studies, you can actually use artificial intelligence in your law. Food and nutrition, you can use that to, find a balance between meals and to know which one is best for diabetic patients and things like that. And we have students that actually worked on, I mean, when you go for a meal, you have your phone, you can scan, maybe whatever they give you, you just scan it, take a picture of it, and then give it a few seconds. It can tell you whether you should eat this based on your condition, things like that. Okay. So, and then of course, biology. If you're doing biology, these days there are a lot of machine learning things happening in biology. Okay. And then in education, for me, education is a very interesting thing. I don't see people doing that, but I think this is very important, because if you check particularly childhood education, how is it that you have twin? And then this twin, when they grow up, one becomes very smart, the other is not as smart as the other one. What happened? Okay, there could be a lot of explanation, but then they're all kind of we're guessing. So with developing AI model, okay, with probably people from there in the Faculty of Education, there are a lot of things we can come up with, at least a model that can tell us how a child learns given this environment. Because if you want to do a kind of study group, you need to keep the child and start studying for a couple of weeks and months and years. But this AI, you can actually do it in a matter of hours. And you get the result that give you confidence to start going to maybe a more practical experience. And then in the medicine and pharmacy, in the healthcare, I mean, now, like I said, I studied electrical engineering, bachelor, master's, and a PhD. But over probably since 2012, 13, 14, I started working in this space of medicine, pharmacy, healthcare. My interest is simply because I'm the one to get sick, and the doctor, I'll still go to the doctor. He will still ask me, okay, what is happening? I'll explain to him. Based on my explanation of symptoms, he will now prescribe drugs. That's basically what they do. Or in some cases, you have to do some tests. So, and if anything happens to me, if I die, then I die. He's not gonna die. He's just gonna walk away and go to the next patient. So I felt that I think I should get into this space and get to know what is happening here. So I've been working in this space since 2012, 13. And one of the things I just want to point out in this multidisciplinary aspect of learning is that I had my PhD student who just, I would say she has already submitted her thesis and it's been approved, and yeah, so she's waiting for her graduation. Now, when I spoke with her, okay, she doesn't come from this background of drug discovery. Okay, she literally knew nothing about this. And then we talked about that. So, okay, can you do this? She said she wants challenge. And for me, that was very exciting that she wants a challenge. I said, okay. The thing is that I'm not an expert here, but I think I know a lot. But we're going to do it since you're ready to do that. Then we started working on that. So at the beginning of this research, we started 2022. We don't know anything about here, including myself. I don't know anything happening in this particular part of this research. So what I do is to, first of all, that's where I start supervision, is to offload whatever I know. about a subject to the student. I'll just offload everything I know. And then that way help the student to go to the literature review, and then we're able to talk about data set that we use, and then other steps. By the end of 2025, we've already developed new drug molecules. So the target is to get drug molecules for hypertension. So we're able to do that using a generative model, okay? Generative AI. We use that to create new drug molecules, almost 2,000 of them, or more than 2,000 for hypertension. So for me, that was very exciting. And luckily for me, I had a student that is very diligent, very hardworking, and who really loved what she was doing. And then beyond that, I said is, okay, I had these molecules. So what? We publish them. So what? So I had to look at how do I get beyond this? So lucky for us, who has a collaboration with the chemistry department to actually produce some of these drug molecules. So currently we have two that have been synthesized so that we can actually see what they look like physically. So we'll be able to synthesize two of them, and hopefully before the end of the year, we can synthesize more of them. So the idea is to synthesize them, try to give them clinical trial, and then see whether they can go for clinical trial if possible. But then we just have to do something, okay? So why I'm mentioning this is that anybody can do AI research, anybody. And I encourage every single student of University of Johannesburg, particularly if you are in your master's or PhD, to just give it a try. Try to somehow get into your project. Talk to your supervisor. We can actually look at it. If there is no AI component, or if it's going to be difficult, we're going to tell you, and then at least you know. But if it is possible, you somehow integrate it. And it is easy to publish papers regarding that, because if you send a paper, AI-related paper to a field where everybody is talking about AI and they see it there, most likely it's going to be accepted. Most likely it's going to be accepted, as long as you don't write nonsense. So the last is data. Now, you can't do artificial intelligence without data. And I can tell you there are no data. I've been working recently on developing a system of trading for waste management, for waste. But the problem is that I can't get any data from any local data or municipality data or the country or even the continent data. So there is no data regarding how much waste you produce from each household, authentic data, not fabricated data. So we will need to do AI training of the model, but we don't have it. So we need to do it some other way anyway. So there is a need to have, particularly if universities should have their own data set. Not data engineering centers or data centers. I'm talking about data set engineering centers, where you have people who sit down to create data sets for different purposes, whatever, and be able to generate the data that is required for that, store it in the university system, and then whoever that needs it will take it and do whatever they want to do with it, free of charge. So it can happen at the municipality the level, or the provincial, or even the state, and then the continent. Okay, so now there is another one that, like I was talking about, the soft job. It is still important for us to do the hard one. We should be able to produce things, not only softwares. We should be able to produce hardware. All these companies, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they are software companies, right? All of them are involved in hardware. Every one of them. Microsoft just unveiled their first quantum computing chip recently. Every one of them is like a race, because they need to outsmart each other. Over here in Africa, we should at least do the very simple ones. Be able to produce very simple things that we use. Take things, okay? Try to use them. Even right in the university, we produce them and use them right in the university, even if it's not going beyond that space. So for me, that is very, very important. With countries like Malaysia, Malaysia is accounting for over between 5 to 7, if not up to 10% of the microchips that is used in all the devices, electronic devices. You know, the country is accounting for at least between 5 to 10% of the chips they use there. So, and they didn't just start. It's not like they have that knowledge base. They are that kind of knowledge-based society. They actually started developing it with that. So they built their own Silicon Valley, which is the Silicon Valley of Asia. They went into that, start producing some of these chips. We can actually, in this continent, start doing that, at least push for that. And that could help create more jobs, okay, and reduce our dependency on all these soft jobs. So with that, I come to the end of discussion, this presentation, and then I open the floor for questions. Please, if you have any question, just go ahead and unmute yourself, and then you can ask the question.
Lorraine, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Maybe I can just chip in while we're waiting for her. So I like the last part that you said, which is probably a follow-up from my previous comment, for us to come to produce hardware. So what plan do we have in place, say, as an institution, to empower our students, especially at that level, master's or even undergraduate, to come to that level of being able to produce hardware?
That is a tough one. We know to get into the hardware development and things like that, it is not quite difficult, but the thing that is always that financial, not constraint. We need proper financial commitment towards that. Now, if you look at all those technologies we'll be mentioning, drone, robotics, and this and that, artificial intelligence seems to be making so much stride because it is one of the technologies that you don't require hardware to develop. That is why people actually get to, talk about it quite, easily, because it doesn't require hardware to produce. It's just basically software that run on your computer or whatever device. The same thing with the other one, like blockchain. So these two technologies, you don't require hardware to do that. So you can actually produce one. Now, for the ones that require hardware, we need that commitment. The commitment I'm talking about is a commitment of, it is not easy to sponsor some of these projects. They could be government sponsored, and then some of them, but I mean, they should be, in this case, they should be funding, proper funding for some of those ones. Maybe you'll give it the priority to some of this funding. And another thing is to look at what we have around. And for me, this is much like a more straight way of approaching it. Look at what we have around and make sure the students' project, the students produce such things. For instance, if you check things like robots, most countries in Africa, they have robots here and there. And none of those robots were produced in that country. That thing is not quite difficult to produce. If you're an electrical engineer, you will know that is not quite difficult to produce, something that you actually could do and produce that. So why not to make it that every robot in South Africa will be produced by, okay, let's say in this space, University of Johannesburg and VET, you produce, make sure you replace all this robot with what you locally or you sourced and produced in the university. So one of the things we really need to do is to look at the possibility of at least addressing local challenges. Even if you produce it and okay, you build a robot, invest in a Johannesburg robot, and then you place it across this road. At least we know that anyone that is not working, we can point at the university. You guys are producing nonsense. At least let's start from that point, and we can progress. But let's be able to address our local needs. There is something I would have shown. I removed it anyway. I saw somebody that the Chinese guy was advertising this kind of stockings, but it is made of plastic. So that you can just put it on and then you walk through water and then you remove it. And I saw it online and I tried to read the comments in Facebook and I saw all of them, they were responding with Africans and they were asking, how much is this? Where can I buy it? Where do I get it? All those ones. I mean, that thing is not like an advanced technology. It's just getting something that's plastic to build the stockings and then put it on. And that thing is actually very expensive. I think it's 170 something rand. That's what they sold in Takealot. So please, let's be able to do those small things. And then from there, we can progress to other things. But yes, that's a valid question you just asked.
If you have a question, you are welcome to ask Prof. Muche. In the meantime, Prof, I don't know if I'm welcome to pose 2 questions that I have.
Sure.
Okay, the first one is that I just need your take on the issue of human element in the use and application of generative AI tools. And also the second question is on how one can measure the use of generative AI, particularly in text, because we have seen a tendency that now if you write well, it's now being associated with generative AI. And I've also seen some tools that are now online that where they say that such tools can be used to check if one have used the generative AI or not in your text. So I don't know if you can answer maybe those 2 questions whilst we are waiting for other questions from the attendees.
Okay, your first question is the human element in the generative AI. I'm not sure. I want to understand what you mean by that human element. Yeah.
Okay. What I mean is that we have seen that when you use generative AI, it's not that everything that it does is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just use Grammarly, for example. It can give suggestions that are actually wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe in a particular context. So I feel like there's a need for that human element to be always there as an overseer or as a judge of some of the responses that you'll be getting from generative AI. So that is where my question is channeling.
Okay. That the question you asked, if you go back a bit, I mentioned something about this. Hold on, let me get there. Yeah. So I mentioned something like, content, this last one. AI content reviewer. Because like you pointed out, the generative AI, sometimes they will call it hallucinating. They hallucinate. They actually give you false information. Let me give you an example. I think it was sometime in middle of last year, I had this presentation I was preparing, then I asked ChatGPT, does South Africa produce solar panel? It said yes, and actually even gave me location. I asked different countries in Africa, a couple of them, it said yes, that they produce it. So, which is not true. But then when I repeated the question again, I repeated the question again. Now the system felt that the first question was not correct because you didn't accept it and you're asking again. So what it did is it said no. And then simply said no, South Africa doesn't produce. Then I went back again and asked the same question and he said yes again. So it wasn't sure. Now, the human element is fine. It is always going to be there, at least for now, over the next couple of years. Simply because, like I said, the generative AI that without us being artificial intelligence based is not really that. It is just a system that was trained with trillions of words. Trillions, I mean trillions of words that system was trained. So it is easy if they train you with trillions of words, you will become the superhuman. So, but because of that, we actually will need that human element to check some of the things they provide for now. But I can tell you, in the future, that may not be necessary. Because at this point, the ChatGPT has an IQ level of, I think, some people are saying 120 to 140, some up to 150. Albert Einstein's IQ level is about 160. So it is near that. When you get to ChatGPT, maybe 5.0 and beyond, you may be increasing to probably things that are beyond human IQ level. So at that point, they may become more correct. At least they should be able to answer questions. If they don't know the answer, they should be able to say. But you can see they answer everything, even when they're wrong. So that is the way the model are. But I think in the future, those things will be addressed, and then the human factor or human element will probably not be needed. And for students that, I mean, in terms of what they use, like I pointed out, the challenge we have as teachers now is that we're not evaluating students' performance in terms of their critical thinking and things like that. Our evaluation has shifted to asking whether they use ChatGPT or not to test that. So now that is doing what we are not supposed to be doing. And there are models all over the internet. In fact, there are ones that when you get the ChatGPT, you give them the result, then they will take the result, change everything to deceive whatever tool that is going to catch them. And more are being developed to the point that that system won't even catch them. For instance, even things like Turnitin, I know students who actually cheat Turnitin. So all you need to do, what they do, although things has moved a little bit higher, when I was doing PhD, I know people who just simply change the text to picture. I mean, they copy the text of that particular portion and then turn it to picture. So the generative, what do you call it? The Turnitin will go there and see it like picture and then disregard it. So there are a lot of things people will always do to deceive the system. That is why, I mean, unless it is where they don't have access to using it, that is the only way you can measure, be able to create a problem. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Prof. Thank you. Let me give Yetsan, to time to ask his or her question.
Okay.
You can unmute yourself, Yetsan, and ask your question. Yetsan, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. I think maybe it might be a connection problem.
Yeah.
Okay,
can I ask a question?
Yes,
so,
yes.
Prof, you mentioned that so with AI, obviously there's progression where robots will start doing things, right? So how would that then impact the development of children? Because with human beings, what has been proven over the years is for you to be able to function in an acceptable manner, you see by doing. So if people have the ability to create mini worlds where they exist in them, then how would then trickle down to the young ones that need to still develop their brains and become functional human beings? The other thing that I want to ask, so because over time, you mentioned that the human element would be disregarded, even in these industries where you see they're introducing bots, that part does not erase the human elements, because even though these bots are very intelligent, they still cannot contribute to the emotional part where humans need to interact with other humans. So my question comes down to, will we get to a point where these bots function at a level where we humans function at? And if so, then what does that mean to the generation that is still going to be born? Because for them to exist and coexist, they need other human beings that function as much as they do.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Your question is very interesting. Number one is that the capability of artificial intelligence depends on the design. And like the way the current artificial intelligence system, particularly because most of these models are using what we call deep learning. Now, the way deep learning systems are designed is such that it is a bit rigid, not a bit, it's very rigid compared to the way the human brain works. Now, the human brain contains roughly between 86 to 100 billion neurons in the brain. And some of these ChatGPT, parameter-wise, they're running up to that level. Now, the thing is that each neuron in our brain, every single neuron in our brain may respond differently. Even neurons that are the same, I mean, they're classified as the same, they can respond differently, each of them. But that is not the case for the models we have today. They respond in groups, okay? They behave alike, almost all of them behave alike with just a couple of changes here and there. Now, that ability of each of these neurons in the human brain to respond differently to the same stimuli or input is what gives us the level of intelligence that we have today and the way we perceive things. So if somebody said that tomorrow that these things are not gonna, unless we don't get to that level, Yesterday I read, there's a paper, I'm still going to read that, but I read the caption that an AI actually was able to replicate itself. I saw the paper yesterday. I'm still going to read it. It was in Forbes. So it can replicate itself. I'm not sure the way it did that, but the moment whether we are going to get to the point where these things can be different or act better than human beings, become more intelligent in that way, whether we get there is that we will, except if we stop. That is why people like the godfather of AI is kind of screaming and saying, hey, we need to slow down. But then who is going to listen to him? Because a lot of people are making money out of this. So, for instance, if we have this kind of system, for instance, what we have here, where you are seeing the world, I mean, you create the world you want to see, it's going to affect the way we raise our kids. It's already affecting them. For the fact that we go for dinner or whatever, and everybody has their phone and the internet, everybody has phone, are preoccupied in a dinner. It's already there. Most of the kids don't have even time for you. Once they have that phone, they don't even want to know whether the parents are around. So it's actually, getting into our space. And whether we can do anything about it, I doubt. We're just going to live that life. And probably in the next many years to come, they will find a way to adapt and live their life. But I don't think that is something we should do. But then I don't know whether it is something we can control. So it's going to affect our kids, of course, the way what we see, the world, even us as a human, as human beings. Our interaction will cease to be. We interact with something else. That is why I have this. I didn't mention or go further to discuss this part of AI. Okay, this one. Yeah. So you have your wife. I mean, she looks at you like, you know, the husband and wife, and this is your AI, agentic AI, who has been embodied into, you know, a system, and it kind of sees you as a human. The way it sees you is probably the way you'll be seeing them. So things, the humanity in us may change. Whether we have control over it, I don't think so. Whether we should worry about it, I don't think so. If it's going to come, it's going to come, and we're going to see how to live within that system. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does to an extent, but then maybe just a follow-up question to that.
Yes.
Then
Yes.
how do we then manage the development of brains to young kids? Because we build models, right? So currently is how I'm thinking, and I stand to be corrected, is so if you build a model, you feed it information, so up to the capacity that you know and other people, which is a lot of information. But to the humans that are infants, for example, their brains has not grown to that capacity where they are able to identify things and act in a certain way. Then if we get to that point, then how will then that part affect the development of their brains? Will they be functional human beings in a nutshell?
That is the question everybody is asking. And that is why I pointed out things like people in education, getting education, faculty of education, getting AI into this system. They have been working on childhood development and things like that. Then we could develop a model that at least can tell us that these kids, this is the way they're going to respond if we go this way, and be able to warn us. As it is now, I'm not sure there is any research around that space that can tell us that this is what may likely happen. We can speculate, a lot of speculation, but then what actually is going to happen? So what AI can do is that we build a model, no matter how, but it will be a model specific to this kind of scenario of maybe childhood education. And then we'll feed that child, I mean, education, I mean, the way they interact, and let this system interact, maybe in a space, and then watch what happens if you provide this kind of agentic AI environment. What are they going to do? Because as kids, there's a way they learn. Remember, my conviction is that when a child is born, they're not born like blank sheet. I don't believe in blank sheet theory. There is something in them. That is why a child will know when to cry. They will even sense when the mother is happy, even as in 1 month, they will always have something in them. Probably as they keep interacting in this world, they start forgetting whatever system they were built with. But your question is a very, very challenging one, but we need to be able to do something about it and encourage research in this area for us to study and see what may happen. And that maybe the result will alarm us, and then we try to do something. Because the moment you talk about anything negative about AI, all this big tech will come. They will actually counter it. I was watching a presentation some time ago by the father of the guy called the father of AI, Geoffrey Hinton. He was talking about the future. He was talking about how the rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer. He was mentioning that the guy that was the guy that was interviewing him quickly changed the subject, moved away from that kind of, hey, let's leave this subject. So you see that there are a lot of things people don't want to talk about. And for us in Africa, we've always been at the receiving end of this whole technology. We don't produce, we just consume. And we need to be, we need to do something about it, at least study these things to know the impact of whatever we're consuming. I think that can help us.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Uche. I think maybe let's just take one more last question before we get to the close of the session. I think we can take both of them. Let me start with the Etsani. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, no, cool. Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I was trying with my mute button previously. So, Prof, when it comes to Africa, I'm more of a pessimist because of the type of leadership and direction that we are going. Because, I mean, as it stands, I think most of the African countries are still on one IR. You know, I mean, we're struggling with basics of political stability, electricity security. But from what you were presenting, you were giving me the hope because you were saying, let's start anyway. Let's start in whatever space and whatever sector and in whatever we can do, right? So my question is, in the little that we are doing, how do you see it coming together such that then Africa becomes a significant player in the future of AI? Because it's definitely not going to come from the top going down, but how does it accumulate from the bottom up?
Okay. So can we get the second question so that I can? Is there any second question?
Saina, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, Professor, for the wonderful presentation. Well, my question is maybe asking for your opinion, because you've exposed AI and presented it thoroughly and beautifully. I happen to think of AI a little bit like a drug. I'll excuse myself for the illustration, but drug addicts can never really contain themselves. And I believe that technology has turned into the drug of scientists. And from where we are, there's no going back. I think the genie is out of the lamp. There will be no way to bring it backward. My question, therefore, Professor, is when it comes to education, would you agree with me that because there are so many tools outside there, making it difficult to properly evaluate students, would you agree with me that all evaluation in the education system should be brought orally? As in, all students should be evaluated not writtenly, but orally. In that way, it's easier to quantify the amount of intelligence and effort by students. Thank you, Professor.
Okay. Let me start with the first one. So, yes, we can do, in Africa here, I believe there are a lot of things we can do. But like you pointed out, yes, we have challenges with government. In fact, I've been in a forum where we talked about something, how to produce something, and then somebody mentioned, a government official, say, is it not cheaper to produce that in China? That was the statement, and I couldn't go further because that is what they tell us. No matter how cheap it is in China, it will not create job here in Africa. That is the reality. So even if it is not cheap here, let's just be able to do something. And I can tell you, when you start to produce those things, they will find a way to come around and be part of you. When we talk about some of these technologies that I just mentioned, like I said, all of them, most of them have been produced. They're there. The only challenge they have is the cost. Once they get to see how to build these materials to lower the cost, they will start to push them into the market. Okay, so what we can do as Africans is, in our little ways, let's do something. Because can you imagine the time where, assuming all of us here can develop an agentic AI system for themselves? So if I can develop my own agentic AI that can do whatever I want, at least I'm not going to buy from anyone. I'm not going to pay. At least I build my own and use it. So we can actually do a lot. And once we start doing that, I think the system and the government will start taking people serious. Before, nobody was talking about drone. You know, this drone can fly, you can play around with it. But once a lot of them started flying around everywhere and causing one or two havoc, then there is a law. We make a law, we start looking at it. So once we start developing it from our little ways, encouraging students to build it. In fact, we had some students over the past from 2021 or so, 2020. We had students, I mean, most of them are bachelor students, coming to go through the AI training that we gave, produce AI models, roll them onto the internet, and see it work. Most of them develop applications like web applications that are running some of the models they developed. And you see how exciting they feel that they have done something. However, the challenge is taking that beyond that space. Most of them look for funding they will get, and eventually they throw those things away. So we should have a way of at least either encouraging the private sector or the government to come into it. I think that will be helpful. But I don't think our future is not bright in Africa. We can. If we start today, we'll beat everybody. I'm very sure of that. We have very excellent brains in the African soil. So there are a lot of people who can do very, very, just give them the opportunity and they will develop all these things probably within a space of 5 years. And for the education, I think the University of Johannesburg is already getting into this space where at least our postgraduate studies like master's and PhD, we have to do oral presentation. Initially, we don't do that. But we see that that is important for us to know whether you're the one that produced this work. So oral presentation for, yes, like you said, is fine. It's very good. I think it is a way to go, if possible, because that will at least tell through whatever people know. But remember, going forward, you need to still keep checking that because people are actually doing brain implants. So even with a brain implant, they can even, outsmart you. But with what we are saying in the nearest future, I think education where things like assessment, for me, I don't have confidence in assessment anymore. So I prefer the exam thing. You sit down there, I'll be watching you and you give me what you have. It is fine if you study with your generative tool, know whatever you want to know. But once it comes to examination, you should keep that aside and be able to use that. So, and as you pointed out, once we start going this way, we can't go back again. Going back is not possible. So the only thing we can do is to get into this AI drive, start pushing, start doing our own things in our little ways. And then before you know it, they'll know that we are part of this fourth industrial revolution drive instead of just sitting and watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof. Uche, for a timely and thought-stimulating presentation. I think it is a conversation and insights that we all needed to hear. I would also like to bring it to your attention that your feedback is important to us. So please kindly fill in the workshop evaluation form that I've provided for your access in the chat box. For more information about RCD and its functions, you can visit our website at www.uj.ac.za/postgraduate-school/research capacity development. And for any queries, you can contact us on rcd-inquiries@uj.ac.za. Thank you for supporting the RCD unit.